Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Untitled Show. I'm thinking of rebranding it. What do you think? Because it's not really a podcast.
I guess. I mean, nobody listens to it. They just watch it.
5 people do.
Oh, God. Oh, good. Bye. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, everybody. This is also a show that is on YouTube that has a lot of visual information to it as we discuss Kickstarters and whatnot. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to even get into the discussion of people say it's a podcast, but it's actually video. And right. I'm like, how is that a podcast? That's video.
So we may be changing the logo, the name of the show, everything.
You're doing it. I'm not doing shit.
Well, welcome to every day of my life. All right. So you're wearing...
Do not make me spit on my computer.
You are wearing an amazing shirt today.
Thank you. Now I can do this because now everybody's seen my shirt. I can now put my computer back in front of my face.
All right. So for those on the podcast, in fact, it is a Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt of the ampersand.
And there's
multiple colors and pirates and skeletons.
Yep, and
a dragon.
Things happening. Okay. Should we just get right into the business at hand?
I think that we are going to start off with things that we are doing in July.
Trying to do as little as possible.
That was a segue for you to jump into what you were doing in July.
So right now I am doing an RPG writer workshop. It's on rpgwriterworkshop.com. It's pretty self-explanatory. And so it is in the month of July, I will have created, and I say this tentatively because I feel like there's a lot of work that goes into this that I'm not really 100% committed to. But anyway, it walks you through how to make an RPG in 1 month. And so there's essentially lessons that you can read online, resources that they give you, and then you're supposed to actually create the content. Right. And it is for a one-shot. So it's just a one-shot. So you're looking at about 3,000 total written words in order to write. Mm-hmm.
And it is currently not, you can't sign up for it now because the registration is closed. Mm-hmm. In fact, the website has a number of other different programs that look pretty cool. For instance, there's a RPG Marketing 101. Which we will be taking at some point.
I'm not.
Because it's like $19.
Okay.
But
that is something that to be said is that it was relatively cheap. I mean, I signed up for the full ball of wax. I think it was $30 in totality. And it's just going through the first week of the course. It's not things that, there are things there that I could have looked up and figured out on my own if I would have been at that point. But I think the $30 was spent so that I do the things that are there. Right. So it gives you assignments that you should be doing. And so therefore, if you've paid the money, you should be committed to it and therefore should be completing it. You know, because in the first week, they talk a little bit about marketing, just making your documents accessible. What else was in that first week?
Where you publish. So do you use the open game license to publish wherever you want, as long as you follow those rules? Do you, and this specifically for 5e, they actually list a couple of other different sources that are part of the OGL license, and they have their own system reference document. Or do you go to DM's Guild, which has a very, you can use all of the IP, or a lot of the IP from Wizards of the Coast, but they take a large percentage of every sale. There are over 4,400 people signed up for this, so it is a massive class.
Yeah, and even on the RPG Workshop, when I got an email from them, they were just saying that they were not expecting this total number of individuals to actually take a class, so it's obviously a huge interest for people to actually write their own stories.
And they there's a number of different sort of instructors that are writing content. So I was looking over your shoulder as you were reading through some of the stuff, and I saw a couple of names on the first, this is just in sort of the first section or two, where they've written stuff for you to read. They've written curriculum. You read it and you learn it.
Just like I'm saying words for you to listen to.
Exactly. One of them, I don't know who this is, but JVC Perry is a writer for Loresmith and Nord Games. And we know both of those companies.
You do know that the internet is...
Yeah, it's twitter.com/JVC Perry.
Okay.
ARRY.
Oh, sorry.
Right there.
There we go.
Okay. You can even misspell it into Google and it works.
It knows who you are. Also, I bet you it probably, because we're reading this off a Google Doc, that Google search actually knows Google stuff. Because it all listens.
Right. And so then there is another one of the writers who I think wrote the accessibility. I don't quote me on that, if they wrote the accessibility part. But no, actually, this person wrote the getting started with your living document, which is the section of, here's, for us, it's a Google Doc or it's a Scrivener document where it's your Bible, it's where everything lives, and you keep changing and adding and changing and adding.
And it talks a little bit about formatting in there. And so if you're not actually used to writing, if you're not used to screenwriting or writing television scripts or things of that nature, or, that it's probably a great resource because it addresses some of the things like tagging and things like that typically come with different styles of, script that you have to write.
And the person who wrote that little section about the living document is Ashley Warren, who co-wrote Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Icewind Dale. I keep wanting to call it Waterdeep Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Really?
Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden.
I just want to call it Icewind Dale.
Yeah, Icewind Dale.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's going to be fun. That's going to be...
Did we have a podcast since we talked about Rime, R-I-M-E?
I don't know.
Probably not.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because also with my misspelling, I spelled Rime of the Frost Maiden, R-H-Y-M-E, and was told it's not a lyrical verse.
Yeah. If you did want to...
Of the Frost Maiden.
If you did want to, you could edit this, and then you would know what is in each one of these episodes. That being said...
June is the do as little as possible month.
That being said, we are going to take a quick little advertising break and be right back for This Week in Kickstarter.
All right, and we're back to talk about This Week in Kickstarter.
Whoop,
Is that it? Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, by the way,
Pew,
episode
pew,
11, that was just this now.
Yeah.
Single ones.
Single batons.
Okay, what are you going to do for episode 12?
I don't know if that's 21 or 12. I don't know.
Either way, we both got it covered. Anyway, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is role player adventures. And apparently, my husband backed their first foray.
That's me, by the way.
In order to make money off of it by not actually using it, but selling it farther down. So he was basically a Kickstarter speculator.
Well,
is this like a retirement plan now, where you're now speculating in Kickstarter just like you do in the stock market?
That is a potential lifestyle choice. I'm not going to deny that is a possibility of things that could happen.
Okay.
For instance, there's a time between Kickstarter fulfillment and general availability of games, and sometimes you get a Kickstarter game and you play it, and it's not as great as you thought it was going to be, so you sell it in that window, and
before it actually hits market, or if it ever hits market. So therefore, you could potentially make money off of it.
So with Role Player, so this is sort of a cooperative board game that takes the Role Player game into an adventure co-op mode.
Okay, and what was the Role Player game, the thing that you backed?
So Role Player, the whole game was you building a character. Right, so you had to, you would roll dice, and you have patterns of rows and columns that you're trying to get based on your attribute scores.
Okay.
And the better unbalanced your character is, the better you do.
Okay.
But it wasn't, and it was something you could do solo, something you could just, you could do competition-wise. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for at the time.
What were you looking for? Because I don't really understand the game piece of it versus
I think
I would just want to have a decent role, you know what I mean, like a character roller.
Yeah, I think that I was looking for something a little bit more fun for solo play.
Okay.
And it wasn't like unlocking things. It was sort of mechanics over and over again. So
it's kind of like gambling. In fact, if you could gamble with it.
Right. Well,
much better game.
Okay. Anyway, so I ended up selling my copy of Role Player. However, Role Player Adventures is a completely standalone game where you take characters and you go through a co-op storytelling, but it's based on sort of a board game and a book mechanic.
Got
right?
it.
So there's no DM.
it's mixing an RPG with a board game itself, and I'm assuming the characters are pre-generated in this.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, it says it's a cooperative storytelling board game for 1 to 4 players, set in the world critically acclaimed dice manipulation game role player.
And so you've said that you could also...
Yeah. Honestly, they had me right there. They had me at these modules that look like the 1E AD&D modules.
Oh, okay.
I was like, immediately when I saw that, I got sort of nostalgic, and I'm like, I gotta back this.
Okay.
Anyway, so, and it's co-op, and I like co-op, so I think I'm gonna back this.
So how complicated do you think this actual story and game is going to be? Because when I first saw this, my initial things were, okay, so it's a little Tainted Grail, and it's a little RPG.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it kind of sounds like it, and it's a little board game. So it's kind of all those sort of built into one. What I do like about, as opposed to Tainted Grail, because I got other things to say about Tainted Grail, each one of these modules is a game, right? So you are not continuing on. You're going to play a campaign, and then you're going to start over, and you're going to play another campaign.
Yeah, which is very much like an RPG.
Yeah.
In the fact that you don't really continue on with your RPG. You're like, okay, so we've not defeated Strahd. Later, Barovia.
Well,
see you around.
Nice. Or it is, we've finished this task, now we're going to go and spend some time in town recouping everything. At Tainted Grail, there is no recouping anything. It is go, go, go.
Okay.
But so what you can do is you can use the role player game to make characters for this.
Thank you. That was the leading question I asked you about
Yeah.
5 questions ago.
So anyway, I don't know if that means I'm going to have to go back and buy role player.
I don't think so. I mean, is there any sort of mechanic in here that's driven by your computer? Because if not, you could literally just make a character.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you definitely could.
You know? And I'm assuming this is on standard 5e rules. It's not.
No. This is it's its own rule system.
Oh, okay.
It is not. It's not part of the 5e system at all.
Okay.
It's again, it's a board game with some RPG elements and some storytelling.
Okay.
So it looks fun. It's co-op.
Also $100 though. It's a big commitment.
Ooh.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Don't even tell me you back this because literally, that sound to me said I back this, and now I'm gonna have to explain to you why I spent $100.
I did not back this.
Okay. You're fine. Everything's fine now.
Well, I would kind of like to. Maybe they could send us a copy for us to play, or if one of our players backed it.
Somebody who wasn't us that could come by the studio and play it with us.
Yeah, that might be cool too. Anyway,
is there but while we're in the world of COVID, is there an online gameplay portion to this? Because I did not see one.
I don't know.
That would let you play with other people online, just like a lot of things are being tested online now currently with gameplay as well as online gameplay.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. It gets egregiously expensive as you scroll down that page, my friend.
$400.
Yep. Yippity yep. Told you. That's why I was like, whoa. Let's talk about how much money we're down here.
So one of the games that I was thinking of backing, we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Should we just transition to it?
I think we should.
Let's go for it.
Anyway, so we wrapping up
Role player.
I'm not going to back it because I've just been denied.
Well, I'm just saying that I would play it as well. It's just $100 is like it really like we have to have nothing going on in life to be like, and here's $100.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, this is I mean, we'd be playing it on the channel, which is even worse because it's not our money anymore. It's your money, and frankly, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so let's transition into somebody else buying things for us.
Yes. So
Ding.
So we follow Ezra Denny on Kickstarter. So whenever he backs something, we get an email
saying, "Do you want to play this?" Or I think to myself, "I might want to play this with you, sir."
So we got this email for the game Intrepid.
So right now, when we're recording this, there's only 4 days to go. I've been looking at this game for a while, but I wasn't too sure exactly like if we wanted to talk about it, how we felt about it, et cetera, et cetera. And then, like you said, you got the email that Ezra said we backed it. I was like, great. Now I don't have to do anything. Guess what? Again, July is turning out to be exactly what I said it would be.
Nice.
Nothing.
So this is a space. It's a cooperative game, which we love. Cooperative games, which we love here, or I do, in fact. And
I agree.
We're in space. You're on the International Space Station. I'm not going to play the video because it's pointless.
Yeah. Other than we talked about when we watched the video earlier, it's the fact that essentially it's probably a relatively inexpensive video to make because it's all free footage from NASA overlaid with like just a simple animation and voiceover. So I'm like, I could have probably done this in my spare time. It's not too tough, especially if there was a template for that like circle and then you just, whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
It also doesn't tell you what the game's about.
Not at all.
It's cool imagery. I mean, that's cool. I like that.
But I bet you that's probably from the instruction manual, so I bet you that's art already made.
But they had to create that, or they had to commission or create that art. Mm-hmm. It looks awesome. This game actually looks like a lot of fun. From what I hear, it is a very difficult game.
Really?
Yeah, so back to you're on a space station and there are meteors and everything trying to destroy you.
But it's also a resource management game. So you're working with your fellow astronauts or cosmonauts or wherever country you choose to be from in order to basically not die on the space station.
Right. And hopefully someday our reviews are as important as Rado's. He loves this game. He's also big into the co-op games. That's sort of his big thing that he likes to do. And he's a great YouTuber and reviewer.
But I love this game. I could have come up with something pithier than that.
Really?
Yeah. This game smells
it's a spectacular. This game smells like China.
No, that's
weird.
I was going to say this game smells like, never mind, fresh cookies, but whatever. Fresh baked cookies.
I can tell you in a fact that at least places that I have been in China, it does not smell like fresh cookies.
I was talking about cookies.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with anything else. I was just thinking about cookies. Like,
anyway.
Honestly, while you're talking about this thing, I'm literally thinking about Korean barbecue and cookies and maybe a cake.
We have none of those things at
I
my
know,
house.
That's why I've been like, that's like sort of the back, like that's the back hamster wheel.
Okay.
The front hamster wheel is this. The back hamster wheel is right now thinking about all that stuff.
This is a game where...
So speed it up, son.
This is a game where I almost backed this morning. Because it is $60.
Ezra's already getting it.
Well, that was...
Why spend more money?
Exactly. I was like, guys, I was about to back it, and I said, wait a minute. This came up because... Oh, yeah, Ezra already backed it. We don't have to.
Full circle.
Done and
Full
done.
circle.
Anyway, I hope to be playing this game, Ezra's copy of it, on the channel with Ezra. All these things are unlocked. These are great. Again, every time we do one of these shows, I want to develop a Kickstarter board game because they bring in a lot of money.
Yeah, but if you think about what goes out, what's spent,
just looking at the artwork, at the production,
and knowing how much that all of those people have to make in order to do that, and how many meetings it takes in order to get something right at that point. What I like about this Kickstarter too is that there's only two pledges: support me and $60.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's not like I have 100 levels of whatever, and maybe that's just me, but I'm feeling more the fact that it's like, just give me a dollar amount, and if that dollar amount feels like what I should be spending for the thing I'm getting, then I'll go ahead and back it if I'm interested in it. If you're giving me levels of like 100, 200, 300, 500, I'm like, too much going on in my head.
Especially because it's like, I want all of those things. Mm-hmm. If I'm backing this, I want to make sure that I get the whole package. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend $400 though.
Yep. And so I think this is something that we talked about. I forgot with which person, because again, I don't edit these podcasts, but it's about unlocking. It was in our extended conversation with Mark, just about unlocking some of the additional things on your Kickstarter, and that people want to feel like they're getting something as well as participating in the making of something. Yeah. So I like the fact that for $60, all of these little things have been unlocked and are now available to you. I mean, to me, when I get my notification that says you're not only getting the one thing you originally backed that you thought was a good value and that you're going to enjoy, but you're getting all these other little extras, to me, that makes me super excited.
Yeah, and it's also not unlocking things that you can buy later. It's unlocking things that you are going to get. Mm-hmm. So that is actually, that influences our Kickstarter that we're going to be launching at some point.
You keep saying that like...
I know. And then I keep getting
no work July.
All right, so...
Ooh, one quick other thing, too, is that I looked at all of the people who created this, and actually, one of them actually does work at NASA. So it might actually be a legit space talk in there.
Every time you say NASA, I think you put a U in it.
Well, yeah, I don't know. NASA?
That's a...
Is that how you say it? How do you say it?
NASA.
Oh, my God.
NASA?
Okay, I'm done.
Nassau is a city in Wisconsin.
It's also, isn't it an island?
Maybe. All right, we are going to jump in. Speaking of islands.
More space.
More space and dolphins.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
This is Houston, we have a dolphin. Houston, we have a Dolph Lundgren is the sequel to this.
We have Dolphin.
This is the next game from Hyber, which made Soviet Kitchen Unleashed.
Yeah, that was a fun game.
Fun game. We were in
France
playing the game with French cards, trying to use Google Translate, except for the cards. It wasn't
that hard.
I mean, it wasn't, because you don't actually have to know what they say. You just kind of have to look at the color. It's
essentially, it's a matching game.
But the words were in French, but the letters were fake Soviet characters, so they were like backwards. Letters. So Google Translate was like, it's almost this word. There's random things in the middle.
And when Thomas says Google Translate, he means he's going to take a picture of it as opposed to typing it in. It's not like you would actually type the word in.
Right, yeah. Anyway, so...
To get more lazy.
Houston, we have a dolphin. We plan on playing that on this very channel very
as soon as the copy comes to the U.S.
Yes, we have a prototype version in the international mail, which is taking a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but we hope to get it in very soon and get that game played.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about what this game is?
In a second, I just want to say that we are fans of Hyber games just because of Soviet Kitchen Unleashed. We think that, or at least I personally think that they are simple games that have enough interest and enough complexity within the game to keep you wanting to play it more, so that every time you play it's a little bit different. There is kind of that a little addictive element to it, as well as, wanting to win or wanting to do better every single time. And then also the duration of the game is not going to be burning you out. So I think that you can play a lot, some of, like Soviet Kitchen Unleashed, what we played in like a half hour, we played like 3 rounds or something. So it's like, let's do it again. So that kind of keeps, you know what I mean? You keep putting the coin in the in
the arcade game.
Exactly, to keep you going.
And then also they utilize either a smartphone or a tablet with a camera for both of those games. That is part of the gameplay, right? So in Soviet Kitchen Unleashed, you are trying to make a specific color. And each of you has cards that only you can see of different shades of
and the
gross
color's
things.
like barf brown or something.
Yeah. So you're, but all colors combined make brown eventually. But so you're trying to make like a blue, and you say, well, I've got a yellowish card, right? You can't say I have this card, but you say it's kind of yellow or mustard maybe, and then somebody else is like, oh, I have a tire that's purple. So then you put like the banana and the tire together, and you get your close to your color.
Exactly, and you're supposed to make something in this kitchen,
and
like from a tire and a banana.
And the app has that intelligence built in to sort of combine those colors and combine 3 or 4 or 5 different colors. So it is definitely a fun game.
It's simple, but it keeps you kind of wanting to, like I said, just put that coin in the arcade. So anyway, Houston, we have a dolphin. Takes place in 1978, I think it is, where apparently the Earth blows up. So you and your crew get on a spaceship, and apparently out from the floppy drive while the captain is checking it one day comes a bunch of fish, and the captain's
hold on, talk to that one over there.
What? That's the fact that that's your spaceship and that you're floating through, and that the captain, who smokes bubbles out of his pipe, just like I did as a child. Yeah. Anyway, so then he hits the floppy drive, and there's like tuna fish or something that come out, sardines that come out of the floppy drive with the floppy disk, and the captain's like, Houston, we have a dolphin. So apparently the dolphin is essentially the trader on your ship.
Right, and you don't know who the dolphin is.
But the goal of the ship is the fact that your ship is stalled and that you need to fix your ship. And so therefore the ship is 4 compartments essentially, and so you need to fix the ship and like release one of the cargo compartments. And so you have to do that 3 times. And so in order to do that, you need to send out 2 engineers and a hero astronaut. And so the mechanic is the fact that the hero astronaut goes inside the compartment. And again, I'm getting way too story driven for what this actually is, because they're the hero who will be launched into space. So they're the ones who have to release the mechanism, and then the 2 engineers outside the spaceship have to release it, and then the captain says release it, and that's if everything goes well.
And so in order to fix something, you each have like cards that allow you to fix, and you play them.
You have astronauts. Your cards are your astronauts, and you play them with like your phone or whatever the device is. So essentially, your device is sit down or laid down on the board, and then the cards go around it. And so 3 people can play only at once, but it's up to 5 players. And so everybody has to put their astronaut into a position and hopefully fix
and so the phone
ship.
reads who it is, and then you set it down, and then the phone is going to tell you what happened, right? Because one of those people might be a dolphin.
And the dolphin is the traitor. The dolphin actually wants to flood every compartment and obviously swim around and kill all the astronauts.
So it definitely, I don't know, I can't wait to play it. I kind of wish that it was here already. This looks like a really fun game. I love it's got similar artwork to Soviet Kitchen Unleashed.
Yep.
I like it.
It's a little character-ish. There's a dog and a monkey. Because you can't go into space without a dog and a monkey.
What's so special about the dog?
Well, you can't kill it as a human because dogs are cute.
It says that in the rule book.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That is exactly the rules. And that's also the thing I like about this. The rules are 4 pages. That's it. It's not really hard to get the rules wrong. But I think a lot of it is dependent upon the app. And so the app should be probably telling you, this, that, or the other thing. And so what the app does is actually tells you the astronaut, has been launched into the void, or, something like that. And so you have to figure out, did we actually successfully, are we actually able to successfully uncouple the cargo hold, or did the dolphin kill the astronaut and send him into the void? And so you can, there's a little bit of the mystery in there as far as figuring out who's actually the traitor in the group.
And there's panic. There's a whole panic element as well.
Yep, where you can overrule the captain, because the captain is the one who basically decides to release the cargo hold or to flood the cargo hold. And so therefore, if you disagree with the captain's choice, you can actually overtake the captain's position by basically voting him down by having enough panic tokens. And
I believe the captain can also be a dolphin.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's, it can get a little slippery in there. I was going to say hairy, but that would be a different joke.
That was only if it was dogs and monkeys.
Yes. All right. So this looks awesome. It has just been launched. 23 days to go. Yep. We should definitely push this one over the $100,000. So.
Okay.
Not us personally, because we're not going to spend that money.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of money. Anyway.
Plus, they sent us the game, so we get to play it. Although there are some cool stretch goals and things, so it might be worth backing to get some of those.
Anyway, so
all right,
should we
so
go on to the
we
last?
are going to go on to,
piece?
Oh my gosh, dice. More dice.
As per usual. Usually I get very excited about dice, and I actually received an email, I think, last week.
So let's talk about what this is. This is Wild Earth Dice Collection, Discover Hidden Treasures.
And this is by Paintings Wow. What?
Nothing.
They did a Kickstarter that I supported probably last year with little pins. The pins were big. The pins were fun. It definitely had its own graphic style. So like I said, when I received this email, I was like, oh, so Paintings Wow is now doing dice. Interesting. Let me take a look. And so...
These are the sharp edge dice, which is sort of the new fad at the moment, which, hey, anything, as long as it's not metal dice.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'm not too sure what the point of the sharp edge dice is.
I have a set of sharp edge dice from 1988.
Okay.
They are so sharp. The D8, what I would do is actually, when I'm introducing people to Dungeons and Dragons, I say, grab this D8 between your hands and rub it. And it hurts. It is like painful. I don't know why. Anyway, they're a disgusting brown color. These look pretty. Why would I not back these?
So, but you didn't answer my question. Why sharp edge? Why do I care? It's gonna roll.
It's the new fad.
Okay.
It's the current new fad.
Okay. I mean, you're right. They do look fantastic. My big issue here is the fact that, again, it's in pounds, and it's 46 of them for one set. Ooh. That's a lot. My math is not great, but I'm suspecting that that's going to be $50, and then probably to get 50. Anything here from the UK is going to probably be about another $11 US. So you're probably looking at $65-ish in order to like get a set of sharp edge dice. Pretty yes, but holy smokes.
$58.
Is that how much US is?
Yeah. Do they all come with a?
Yes, you do get a little box, but you could send them to me in a regular box. Like I keep all my dice in a bag, so. And I think most people that I play with who have more than a set of dice, unless the dice are very special, like those little itty bitty metal dice that are probably lost already that you bought me.
They're over there.
Okay, they're not lost apparently. I was keeping them in a box so that I wouldn't lose them, but too late. I've lost them. Anyway, so again, beautiful dice, but I can't spend the money.
$58 on a set of dice. You
exactly.
know, that's half of a board game.
Yeah, that is. Exactly. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to pass on this one. It is beautiful, though, and I do enjoy Paintings WoW. I did, in the previous Kickstarters, they're definitely enthusiastic. They will reach back out to you. They're definitely part of the community and interested in being part of the community and are active on Twitter. And scroll up once, Thomas. If you're watching this on the video podcast, the pin that you see there as part of some of their rewards, that's kind of the style of artwork that they go with. Right. Just as a general company, I have a barbarian pin that has that style with some axes on it.
Yeah, so this is one thing that does annoy me about some Kickstarters is the day one backer specials. Not everybody is going to be able to back day one.
This is true. In fact, I probably got the email for day one backer, and I couldn't look at. I was just so busy I couldn't look at the email until like 4 days later.
Yeah, so I'm not.
You could probably buy the pin after the fact. I
don't know. I'm not. So Tainted Grail had a day one backer. I didn't even know about Tainted Grail when it came out. I'm not fully up to versed. But once I heard about it, I wanted to back it. But then I was missing out on a full extra character. That's annoying and stupid, and I'm not a fan of day one.
Okay, this is a pin. Let's calm down.
Whatever. We're not going to back this. We're not going to back this anyways, and it doesn't matter because this is way too expensive.
If you do, I'm just saying I wouldn't throw you out of my table. I'd say these are definitely very pretty dice. The case is beautiful.
Yeah.
I just can't afford that kind of money for a pair of dice, especially when especially if you're going to roll some crap. You're going to roll some crap numbers for me. I'm going to put you in dice jail.
Oh yeah, if you imagine spending $58 on a set of dice and they just roll terrible because these dice are not going to be guaranteed to roll perfect, right? Any sort of translucent die is not perfectly balanced. It's not possible. So yeah, you could get a shitty die and you'll never use it because it rolls like ass.
Or you could be me and my luck is terrible, so therefore it's all the same thing.
You need to switch dice. All right, so with that being said, don't play Dungeons & Dragons with Birds of Paradise. Play Call of Cthulhu with Birds of Paradise.
Yes, you absolutely should. Birds of Paradise, I do have to say, shameless plug. Our GM was using it to basically kill us, and then I was like, you know what? I think we have a set laying around the studio. I'll just double down, and it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
It was low dice for low dice, just one after the other.
Also, check the description down below. You can get Arizona-themed Birds of Paradise right now.
It doesn't matter. For Cthulhu, they're the best dice ever.
And
just any pair.
There's a referral link down in the comments below.
Okay. Are we kicking it to...
Let's take a break.
All right.
We're going to take an ad break. And then we're going to come back, and who are we going to be talking to?
I'm not going to say his name because I mess everyone's name up.
Rob Daviau. That was close. That was very close.
You were teetering on the edge of mispronunciation.
Daviau of Legacy fame. He is generally regarded as the inventor of the Legacy mechanic, starting with Risk Legacy, a game that he developed when he was at Hasbro. And then, obviously, there were some other games. Seafall, he helped with Matt Leacock and made Pandemic Legacy, which is my personal favorite game. Season 1 is my favorite game. Kind of want to play Season 2 again. even though I've played it 1.5 times already.
We could just start from the beginning.
I'm definitely going, well, we have half a game at home.
Okay.
I am definitely going to play December again. As soon as this quarantine is, as soon as this actual pandemic is over,
we're going to play Pandemic for real.
We can get back to playing Pandemic.
Yep. So when did we take the commercial break? Before or now?
Right before we go to Rob. So as soon as we're done talking, we'll go to commercial break.
Oh, fine. Okay.
All right, we're going to welcome Rob Daviau here to the Untitled podcast. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hanging in there. I wish I could say I was great, but in 2020, I don't be like, good, nice to see you. I'm just like, yeah.
Still here.
Yep,
Still here.
The haircut situation.
My wife just cut my hair in the backyard like an hour ago. So
congratulations.
Turns out she actually is pretty good at it. So, but I'm not surprised. She does a ton of arts and crafts and production and skills and cake decorating. So she watched 2 YouTube videos, goes, I get it, and then has been giving me haircuts.
Does she also read murder novels?
She does not. Why?
Okay, I'm just saying is that if she's a quick learner and she'd be like, oh yeah, I get it. And then just is looking at you like this over the novel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, she'd do a poison. It would be fine. But we get along great, so I'm not worried.
All right, excellent.
So, I mean, I have no idea where to start. I mean, because there is so much. I think for kind of a background about us is we love doing co-op games.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, all of our games that we start with are legacy games on top of that. So,
Okay.
Pandemic Legacy, we played that before we played Pandemic.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Betrayal Legacy, we played that before we played
Betrayal
on House on the Hill. So that's kind of an interesting, I think, place to start. What are your thoughts on starting with legacy games versus starting with just traditional board games?
Well, it's the road less traveled. But you do a lot of role-playing games, right? So you're used to looking at a big chunky rule book and digesting it and figuring out and going back. And if you're doing that, we tried to write the legacy games knowing that you may not have played the original game. But we kind of assume when designing that, well, someone at the table has probably played the original game at least once and can kind of give some framework. But it should work. And in the case of something like Betrayal Legacy, the rules are different enough that you may have done better because you're not playing how you're used to. You're playing how you should. Like the action system kind of cleaned up some of the timing that was in regular Betrayal, and it reduced the card count. And it's supposed to say once per turn before you do this, or we just made it like action. So you might have been better off by not having to unlearn things before you learn things.
Better off not knowing things.
that feels like our motto.
Yeah, that could be the motto.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who do very well with that. So, not my style.
There are a lot of interviews, or at least a few great interviews out there. Actually, I listened to the Ludology podcast last week with you on, which was an interesting sort of time capsule period, because it was after Risk Legacy. You were talking about Seafall. You didn't mention Pandemic Legacy at all in that interview. And then thinking about...
So probably 2014, 13, 14. Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. So for me, listening to it, knowing sort of things that came afterwards, it was an interesting... I don't know why it was so interesting. I think partly because it was, talking about Seafall and what it would do, and in there you even talk about, I just gave you advice, but I'm doing something different in Seafall.
Right.
Which was an interesting thing to...
Yeah, I mean, that was, I came out of Hasbro in 2012, and Risk Legacy had been just this great last thing I had done in Hasbro, but I had been there 14 years, and I really expected to be in the mass market game industry. And at that time, I was trying to go to New York Toy Fair and pitch ideas to Mattel and Hasbro and Spin Master and do these casual games and license games. I was consulting a lot, including back to Hasbro. And I was really trying to do something big and meaty, which was Seafall. Like, how do I take this Risk game, which is confrontational and fighting and armies and world maps, and do something a little different. But you were at that podcast as a guy going, I don't know what I'm doing. right? Like for the first time in 14 years, I have no idea how to run my own business. I have no idea what type of projects to do. I have no idea how to promote myself. I mean, I was trying and I was working towards it. Um, and then by 2015 or 2016, my life had gone in a different way. Like Pandemic Legacy had come out. I was doing more co-op games. Seafall came out in 2016 and didn't do well. Pandemic came out in 2015 and did do well. I had stopped designing for mass market companies. I had stopped consulting and just was doing mostly legacy games, but not entire legacy games for the hobby market. And that's the one thing I've learned about working for myself and running my own business or various businesses is I always have a plan. And then a year later, I have a new plan, right? Like you have to both be trying to get somewhere and then you get new data or something works or you reach that point and you say, now what? And so, Restoration Games, I started spinning up that company in 2017, right in the middle of everything else that was going on. And that was a big decision too. Like, okay, I've got some success right now. How do I really want to stop and become a publisher at the same time I'm becoming a designer?
So actually that brings up a great question when you talk about changing plans mid, you find new developments, et cetera, and then you change your plan. What's game development like at Hasbro? Like I'm assuming just like any large corporation, it's very structured. You have to go through checks and there are checks throughout the process. You have a project manager, there's a lot of structure as far as like calendars and budget and deadlines. When you came out of that, like, was that kind of the world that you knew as far as process goes? And then when you talk about the transition, was that kind of where you still were when you were developing new games? Were you kind of in that thought process? And then how did that trend, like, how did you evolve or devolve out of that?
Well, first I devolved and then I evolved back. It's interesting. Yes, Hasbro is a corporation. It's a publicly held corporation. I can't speak as to how it works now. So I can talk about how it worked from 98 to 2012. So basically the first decade of the century, the aughts. A lot of structure, a lot of checkpoints, a lot of budgets, a lot of profitability checks, a lot of marketing driven decisions, a lot of what are we doing, redirects and things you would expect from a large corporation, some of which I agreed with, many of which I didn't because I was the advocate for the kid in the game, not the marketing and the profit. I was responsible for profit, but I'm like, come on, but this is so good. This is a fun game. They're like, title doesn't work. I'm like, title's great. It's an inside joke. So like, no, it's not. Oh, okay. And I was very much in my 30s and I'd come from advertising. So I was the creative who was going to change the world with my creative ideas and stuff like that. And I don't know if I'm not good for corporations or not good for the way Hasbro did corporations, but it was always a bit of a, like trying to, like fight the system.
Mm-hmm. How much did you actually feel like you won there? Was it a win-loss sum? Like, you know what I mean? Kind of talk about that perspective. Cause I know a lot of creatives and working in a structured environment, like at the end of the day, somebody has to pay the bills and therefore you're always beholden to that person. Like, how did you manage to that? What am I going to give up versus what am I going to really fight for?
I did it poorly, quite honestly, because basically when there's corporate politics, you can say like, I don't want to play that. That's a BS game, right? Let's just do the best idea. But it's going to exist. You get a group of people, 20, 30, 50, 100 people, you're going to have checkpoints and organization and hierarchy. And that's just the nature of group dynamics. So first I was like, this game is dumb. The game of like work the system in your advantage. So I'm not playing. Well, what that really meant was I was playing poorly. Right? You can't opt out of the game of politics in a place you work because you don't like the fact that there's politics. It just meant I wasn't sitting on the sidelines, meant I wasn't working the system, building capital, doing what I was supposed to do. By the time I realized that, was too little too late. People had made decisions like he doesn't listen or he's rash. Now, that wasn't to say I was going around like lighting things on fire and not doing, what I was supposed to. But looking back now at age 50, I could tell myself at 28, like, look, this is just part of what you signed up for. You get 401k matching, you get healthcare, you get vacations. It's a corporation. So learn the system and learn to work within the system, make work your advantage. And the one thing I really did was risk legacy. Like at the end, I had worked the system and I figured out like, here's how I get this idea really like through this system by calling in favors or doing this or twisting an arm here or doing that, which all sounds very Machiavellian, but it's just Like when you want to ask your parents when you're a kid to like, hey, I got an idea of how I can actually, and you're trying to like connive something. Like it's just how things get done.
So when you came out of Hasbro, then taking some of that, taking that knowledge with you and taking that sort of like structure with you, then what happened? What happened there when you said you devolved and evolved?
I devolved because I was like, finally, I can just be a creative. Well, I was running my own business and I wasn't focused as much on deadlines. I wasn't focused as much on self-editing. I think that's part of the things that people see in Seafall is it needed like someone to, and me now would go back and be like, let's edit a few things out here. Like you got too many ideas. But I didn't have someone else going, you have too many ideas. I didn't have someone else saying, this is too big. I didn't have someone else saying, you're taking too long with it. Just make a decision. I was like, finally, I get to write my novel, right? Like, like someone, and not the discipline to be like, okay, if I don't get to here by this date, then either I need a new idea or I need to put it to the side or I need to speed up, right? I was like waiting for inspiration to strike, um, which is fine if making a game isn't your only source of income, right? And then if you're doing something creatively for your own source of income, you need to put some discipline in place. And so when I say devolved, I just got a little bit like, I'm gonna kind of do what I want, and it wasn't in everything. Like I was very focused on how much money am I bringing in for a company, what do I have to do for consulting, projecting revenue. But in some ways, I got a little bit like, I don't have any structure anymore. Let's see what that goes like. And then every year since then, I put more and more structure back. Some of which I've picked up from Hasbro. I find myself saying, "Oh man, that thing I used to hate. There was a good point there. I still don't like some of the way they did it, but yeah, like checking profitability at this stage in the process is much better than when I've been checking because I've been checking it too late. And then you sort of are emotionally committed or you've spent money on illustration and you're like, oh, how do we get some of our money back because we invested more before we realized that our forecasting wasn't good. So at restoration, we sort of pulled that back up and it's a softer checkpoint. Like we don't have all the routine of a large corporation of you're going to go through here and this is what paperwork you have to do. But I'm starting to go, yeah, before we take that next step and hire this illustrator and do this and get sculpts, can we just run some numbers? And then we don't have a system for running numbers. Okay, let's make a spreadsheet and let's look at all of this, and sort of putting those things in place around it is letting us make better games that make more money faster than just let's make a bunch of fun stuff and see where the money shakes out, which sounds cool, but in most cases the answer is we didn't make any money.
Is that why Restoration or other companies would use Kickstarter versus developing it internally and then releasing it?
Well, Kickstarter is like probably a whole show in and of itself, and there's different people use it in different ways, and I've used it in different ways and it's evolved. I mean, to some extent you can use it as venture capital, right? You're a small company, you got to do a print run, you don't know how many to print, you need the money to finish the art and do all of this, and it could be $80,000. And if you guess wrong and no one wants it, that's a lot of money. I think most people are not like, it's only 80K, whatever, right? I mean, there's very few, and they're not making games, those people who have that kind of money. So Kickstarter can be a way to check to see how many people are interested, and then to get that money up front so that like, okay, I have this money to pay it. You face problems after where you're like, great, 20,000 people wanted it. That's far higher than I thought. Let's run some numbers. And I'm losing money now because this scaled and that scaled and we didn't think of this and we put these bonuses in and these extras and suddenly it's not profitable anymore. What do we do? Some people do it as marketing and promotion. Like Simon doesn't really probably need the capital, but it's the type of thing. It's like it's a big promotion. It's a big splash. They're allowed to put extra stuff into sort of the backer kit because you're selling direct to consumer, so there's not as many markups along the way. So there's a couple different reasons why people use it.
So with Return to Dark Tower, that was the Kickstarter. Was that mostly because there's so much cost involved in actually building electronics and apps and all the other?
Yeah, it's over $1 million for the development budget of that. Wait, the development budget $1 million? Maybe not. Maybe with production. I don't have that at my fingertips. But we're paying basically almost a full year of a tower designer. We have a consultant in Hong Kong who's working with the factory. We've got an electronics engineer. 3 illustrators, 2 graphic designers, 3 game designers. Like this is just a lot of overhead to get all of this. We got a programming house in Iceland, and we're going to be doing some sound design. We have a UI expert. So there's just a lot of people, and it's just not the type of thing that our company was just like, oh, we've got $1 million lying around, third year of a company. Of course, we've got a war chest like that.
Well, and not only that too, is you think about just the number of people that you're bringing on. Who did project development for that, or who did project planning for that?
Suzanne Sheldon works for Restoration. She does our marketing and sort of our project management, but also Tim Burrell-Sayward, who is designing the tower, and he worked on Beasts of Balance, and he's over in London. He is managing, he is basically managing the project in terms of everything going in the box that isn't gameplay. So engineering, lights, manufacturing, sound, speaker, tooling, all of those sorts of things. I am managing the creative portion of it. How does it play? How do all these pieces come together, including like the program, the app, and how that works with it. And then Suzanne sort of overseeing all of that. So you even get hierarchy in something that is a company with 6 part-time, 2 part-time, full-time people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how much was sort of, I guess, designed and ready to go when you launched the Kickstarter? Was it still just a prototype? And
well, this was a tricky one, right? This is the biggest project I've ever done, and hopefully the biggest project I ever do in terms of size and scope of people and things that are going on. Kickstarter is interesting. If you're done, people are like, well, what are the stretch goals? They want to feel like investors. They want to feel like they bought a seat at the table. Some people don't care, but many people are like, I want to know, like, I have an opinion, or can you do this? And feel like it's not done and they're helping finish it. So if you show up like, it's done, we just have to press print. There's a number of people like, just make it, I'll buy it. Like, you're just a pre-order system. You're not a creative endeavor. You do too little, a lot of people are like, I'm not spending that much money. You don't have your act together. Like, how do I know you're really going to make it? How do I know it's going to work, as you say? So you have to kind of get up to this point where you have a proof of concept and a rough cost, and you know the direction you're going. But based on how much money you get and what some people are saying, you still have room to sort of pivot and do things. And in the case of this, we had 12 months of development to do where we had to pay people. So we were at a point where like, well, we probably can't just pay people for another year anyway. So we picked what turned out to be fortuitous timing of the beginning of January to run this Kickstarter. And then we've all been in quarantine, like globally, we've been working on our various projects. We meet twice a week as a larger team, and we have a Slack channel to talk about things, and smaller portions meet, and we're going around and around. And we have some early towers now. We have an early build of the app, and finally this week we were starting to get stuff like, I think the electronic engineer was saying, well, I'm basically wrapping up. I mean, I'll be on call, but I got this ring working and that, and stop the speaker from having static from the LEDs, and the sound's all working. And I'm like, oh, things are now moving into done, which is a nice feeling. And now we have a real app, and now that we have a real tower, none of us can get together to play it. So we still have to play it over a tabletop simulator. And we're trying to figure out, like, okay, it's still taking a little long. Is this tabletop simulator with an app on a shared screen, or is this really what's happening? And right, it's a big challenge to try to play test games these days, because you're like, people are missing this rule. And it's like, yeah, it's hard to see this rule because you can't see this deck of cards and the board and your hand at the same time, where you could in the real world. So many game designers, myself included, with more complex games, are flying blind over usability.
Got it. And in fact, that brings up a great question about play testing, because we were talking about, has Tabletop Simulator made it easier or harder? Obviously, it doesn't sound like it's that much easier. It sounds like it's actually kind of harder.
Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, if you have a thought about that, but also, like, do you think going forward, Tabletop Simulator could actually be something that you would, on less complex games, use in the future? Like, what was playtest before? What do you think playtest is going to be in the future?
I actually think Tabletop Simulator is largely a net positive. I still struggle with some of the decisions they put in there. Like, there's too much physics right? Like it's too much physics for me. It's like I want it to sometimes act more like a game where I put a card and it just goes in the discard pile. It doesn't half fall off and then roll over and knock over a piece. I'm like, I can do that in the real world, right? But I would rarely do that in the real world. But we're a virtual company. My wife and I work together. We're in the same place. We used to have weekly game groups. So one of the things that I've found a really hard to replace since leaving Hasbro is regular, predictable, anytime play testing. At Hasbro, you go like, I got a game, anyone can play, and you kind of shout up and walk around. You could always find 3 or 4 people who could spare half an hour just to try something. And in many cases, I might have an idea and something ready to play, and it might be 2 weeks before I can get a group in the evenings, and they've got kids, and I'm working, or I'm business travel before you can get it to the table. So it's really slowed down the design process. So Tabletop Simulator has sped that back up. And in the case of something like Unmatched, which is our line of battling card games for restoration, it makes play testing real fast because it's a deck of cards. You got a hand of cards. We're testing new decks. It takes almost no time to build and update them. It's a dream. When you get Return to Dark Tower, where you've got a tower, but you're not really looking at the tower. You're looking at a separate monitor, which has an app, which has a virtual tower, and it's got a market over here and a market over there. And then you've got a board with your pieces in it. And it's like a lot of different cameras. And I don't quite use it enough to be able to like switch cameras and be like, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And I notice other people are like that as well. They're like, oh, right, there's treasures in the treasure market. What are those? Hold on, let me drive over. You can't just be like waiting for your turn and go, yeah, I'm gonna do that on my turn, right? Every turn requires moving. So some games it slows it down, and I'm not sure what can be done about that. I mean, I guess the more I use it or people use it, the faster we'll get for this new interface. But overall, it allows us to iterate things much quicker.
Got it. And the people that you play test with, is it consistently the same group? And if you were to give advice to somebody who either wants to be a playtester or somebody who has a game that wants playtesters, what do you look for in a playtester? What kind of personalities, what kind of thought process, like think about who those people are at the table and what they bring for you.
If you want to be a playtester, especially for restoration, you can just sign up to be one. And then like you can see our process. We're always looking for new people. We have a couple hundred on the list, and we're sending some stuff out. Mostly just dependability. It's like anything else in business. The world's tough right now. People have commitments. You say you're going to sign up for something and you're not getting paid. I recognize you're not getting paid. It's a sort of a chance to see behind the scenes and have a say. So there's no obligation. And if people don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. But we will ask 20 people to be a playtester knowing 18 will say, yeah, and 7 will respond.
Yep.
It's like casting a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, we really needed more data. Should we have done 40? But then people are going to get tired of being asked. So if you like, basically people who say, I'm going to do it. And then they do it. And we try to give them a form. That's just like the most wonderful thing. And as long as you just give like your honest thoughts, like that's fine. You don't have to solve our problems. I mean, sometimes people have ideas that are like, oh no, you're missing what we're trying to do here. And some people have ideas. You're like, oh, I think there's something there. But mostly, although it's not fun to read, if you just basically list your complaints, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, I wish there was more of this, just I like that, I didn't like that. We start looking for consistency across different people. And usually like there's something like numbers, where you have like this, 1 to 5, how fun was it? What do you think the best card was? What was it? And you have these sort of quantitative data, and I look at that and I'm like, and it's all good. And then I look at the comments, and that's where I really find stuff, right? You're like, okay, we got 14 responses and 4 people talked about this thing as being annoying. This thing is annoying. And it works perfectly. It's like 4 people took the time to play it and then complain about it. Probably another 4 didn't like it, but didn't think to complain about it, right? We've got a problem here. So, this is not a chance to write the worst review of your life. I mean, some people like to do that. This game is unplayable dreck, and how dare you call? You're like, okay, you didn't like it. That's fine. We're going to make it better. It's not done, but just some people, I think, delight in writing a bad review of a game that's not done, which often doesn't help, other than you might not be asked to play test if you're going out of your way to be rude. Right? If you're just like, I didn't like it, I did not have a fun time, that's not being rude. You're just telling your thing. But if you're like, whoever came up with this asinine decision to make this rule is a different approach that you sometimes see in playtesting.
It's interesting. So we do playthroughs. We don't do reviews. I think we would like to. But looking at the game reviewers out there that I watch and I do like, they put a lot of effort and work into those. Mm-hmm. Which is a lot different than opening up a board game and getting most of the rules right and having fun.
Yeah, most of the rules is great. Good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the rules. So talk a little bit about when you started Restoration Games, kind of what led you to talk about, first of all, for everybody, what is Restoration Games? What is their goal? And then kind of how did you evolve into that?
Restoration Games is a company, we're about 4 or 5 years old, that takes old games that are out of print and puts them back in print. So we have on the shelf right there is Stop Thief, which is a game from 1979, and Downforce is a redo of some Wolfgang Kramer games. We got Fireball Island down here, which was a 1986 game. So we basically reboot board games. And they might be obscure ones that you hadn't heard of, or they might be popular ones that you remember from your childhood. And we don't just reprint them. It's not a retro company where we're like, let's take the same graphics and the same, pieces. We look at it and say, okay, if this game was coming out now, based on this idea, what would we do to make it better? If someone pitched this game to us right now, we go, oh, we like it. And then we would do development on it. And sometimes, like we could Return to Dark Tower, it's almost a complete redesign. That is a complete redesign with a few touchstones. And in the case of Downforce to Stop Thief, it was, no, let's get rid of the roll and move and add some cards, or let's take, this had 5 different versions, let's take a little of column A, column B, and put them together. And then we put them out. And I got involved because Justin Jacobson, who's the president and founder, reached out to me. At Hasbro, I had done a lot of work with Risk and Clue and brands, Game of Life and license. And so I was well familiar with saying, here's a game. Would it work as a card game? Would it work as 2-player? How do you take this game and, make it contemporary? What do you add? What do you take away? So I was like going home for me in a way. So we are essentially partners in the company. Like technically I'm the chief creative and he's the president, but the roles are pretty fluid. We just kind of run the company.
Like, how hard is it to get IP? I mean, is there a game where you're just like, I'm excited, I love this game, and I want to rework it or something? Are there games out there that are just like, nope, you can't have this?
Yeah, there are a few, and that's just part of it. There's some that like are in print already, or we were going to get it and stay signed with someone else. There's some that the rights are unknown and we can spend months or years trying to untangle. That is mostly Justin. He's a lawyer. And every game's a little different. Sometimes it's just, oh, hey, this is out of print. We go to the designer and we sign it just like a standard publisher. And sometimes, like with Stop Thief, it was with the original designer. He is in his 80s. He was tickled that someone wanted to bring it back. He had made a lot of money in a lot of different ways. He's like, it's yours. Just gave us the rights, right? Like, whoa, okay. I think we donated some money to a charity of his, one-off, and now we just own the game. Right. And other games are more complicated because there's trademarks and patents and copyrights and a whole bunch of stuff that I'm only slightly aware of. But that's our secret sauce, is that Justin knows what he's doing and is willing to take the time to sort of do it. And I think a lot of people who would be trying to do what we do wouldn't quite have the resources to put together, we hope.
Or like, what is the earliest game that you remember enjoying as a kid?
Uncle Wiggly. See, no one started that. It was a roll and move, or maybe a draw and move board game. I think it had red cards. I think it said, in retrospect, had some bad racial politics, right? Like I think it was set in the South, like Brer Rabbit, sort of. It's based on a book or something. I was like 4 in 1974, and just the thrill of like telling a little story. I think all the cards were written in rhyming couplets. It had lose a turn and go back to start, and everything you would do if you were making a 3rd grade board game right now. But I remember really liking it. I also remember really liking Candyland at age like 3. I played Blue, and I remember the dining room floor, the shag carpet. Remember, it was 1973 in a dining room in the apartment we lived in at the time, playing that.
So for that game, was it for Uncle Wiggly? Was it the storytelling aspect of it?
Probably. I mean, I'm a huge role-playing person. I think it was an adventure. You were a person going through a world and stuff happened to you. And I wasn't playing on a path, and I didn't care if you lost a turn, and I probably didn't care about winning. I sort of just remember the feeling of what's going to happen next. And that's the type of thing that I do carry into a lot of my board game design, is what's going to happen next.
So I know that we're currently in, as people say, Pandemic Legacy Season 3 currently.
Mm-hmm.
It's the LARP version of it. I think that there was an announcement that the publisher is they're going to wait.
It'll be out this year. It'll be out this year. There were just production delays because of COVID and the complexity and stuff like that. I think at the original plan last year, it would have been out by now, but then the world kind of blew up, and to the best of my understanding, I have a date that we're not talking about yet, or a rough time frame, and we should be talking about it real soon. So, but it has nothing to do with that. The pandemic game's been selling very well. So it is absolutely nothing about like that. It's a bad time for it. And in fact, the game itself, although it has a pandemic as a backdrop, is a different game. Like Season 2 was a survival post-apocalyptic game about it discovering the world and rebuilding the world while a pandemic is going on, right? So this has like that same sort of thing where it's a backdrop to a different story. But we'll have it. I'm excited about it. I finished over a year ago, so.
Our Season 2 playthrough, we were doing so well. I mean, it was uncanny how well we were doing, making all the right decisions.
Were you
everything.
Cheating?
Up until December, and then we just crashed and burned.
I am sorry. I actually never want that to happen, right? I want people to feel like they could crash and burn, or they fail the first time, but then they succeed the second, or it comes down to the last card. I know if you make it that you can't lose, then there's no tension, and therefore some people have to lose, but I never want it to be. I want everyone to almost lose December.
We consciously made a decision that made us lose. So it was one of those things where we could have if we didn't make a decision.
You learned something maybe that you can apply to real life. I don't know what it is, but
stop making decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, just let go of the steering wheel. That's fine.
Yeah. It'll be fine.
But I mean, it's one of those things. So as soon as we get back together, we're gonna play December over again. We're gonna be like, hey, it didn't happen.
That's fine. I don't care. Just have fun. It's your game.
So you brought up an interesting point in the fact that you want that tension that everybody feels like you're always on the precipice of potentially losing, but you still have a chance to win. What are some of the other pieces or other key things that you want people to, I mean, it's kind of a weird question, but to emote during a game? How do you know what I mean? You talk about storytelling, having a journey, having people feel X. Are there other things that you really want people to kind of get out of a game, not just I've conquered X and done Y, I've collected so many things,
I think it's the type of things you'd expect people to get out of a movie or a book, and everyone's a little different. Like you played Betrayal Legacy, and you played that through. I wanted you to actually feel like the house had a story, like it was a main character and it evolved. I wanted you to laugh at some stuff, but I wanted you to actually wonder what the helm was all about and have this evolving story. That was a tricky one because as a horror story, if you're writing a horror story and you go, oh, by the way, in chapter 1, the main bad guy's a vampire. You're like, okay, I know about vampires and what they do. But if you never say what it is, then you're like, it's a scary thing, but I don't know what it is, and therefore I didn't get it. So you have to like give enough information over a period of time where you sort of figure out what the bad guy is, but never quite so much that it becomes a stat block in a monster manual. So that was a real interesting. I wanted to see if we could tell a story that had gaps in it and create a horror story out of that where people would fill it in. And then at the very end, I wanted people to feel like they had done something heroic, right? And actually walk away going, oh, wow, I actually feel, I don't know, moved. And moved is probably too strong a term for something like that because it always is a little bit comic booky. I mean, I did think like I'm going to try to scare people. It's very hard to scare people with event cards, right? And like setup on your turn, main action. Like it's very hard because you keep pulling people out back into the mechanics and the stuff like that. But I wanted people to feel unnerved or queasy sometimes, either with a card or an event where you go, oh, did you just use the blood flame on yourself and then eat a doll? Like, why did you kill the cat? Right? Like just a couple like no moments. So I want people to have an emotion. The marrow eating spoon. Yeah, that's a real thing. As is the bloodletting flame. I want people to feel like they genuinely had a reaction to the game, an emotional reaction. I was sad, I was happy, I was energized. One of my favorite things, and I know a game is working, is if at any point when people are playing the game, they stand up. Right? People around a table and they're like, oh, and like last turn, and they're standing. Like you cannot be contained by your seat because you're too excited. I'm like, we did it. 2 people were standing up during the last round. And I'm like, it's all it takes. It means that you are no longer playing a game. You are involved in an experience.
Mm-hmm.
That was, playing Betrayal Legacy was it was an amazing experience. One of my best memories of it is, again, we get rules wrong all the time, is when the audience pointed out that we were disrespecting the helm.
Nice.
And we were disrespecting the helm.
Yes, we were.
A lot before we realized, oh yeah, it's in the book. You're not supposed to disrespect the helm.
It's not in the book. Mm-mm. It's on the back of the helm.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right, and that is whoever wrote the back of the helm is an unreliable narrator. There's a good reason why it's not in the book.
Nice. So we were not doing it wrong. We were.
No, I mean, for people who haven't played, like, who's telling you to respect the helm and why are they telling you to do it?
Nice. For us, it was the YouTube comments, but
yeah, that's true, and it does say it on the back, and it's one of some people's favorite things. Someone named Ryan Miller used to work at Wizards of the Coast, was an early design consultant on that, and he came up. Well, we knew that what we wanted was something that let you get rerolls once per game to mitigate some of the swinginess of the dice, but we wanted you to get this vague sense of what are you really paying for getting these rerolls, right? Like, I'm gonna, someday I may call a favor in on you, but then like not really caring because in the moment you need this reroll. And we knew that most people, if not everyone, would just use it. And occasionally some people are like, I'm not using it because I don't trust it, but I don't think I've ever heard of anyone not doing that. And we were looking at different things and different systems. And then he just basically came back with the helm and almost all of the text that was on the back. He's like, I had an idea. And it was like the picture of the helm and all of that stuff on the back. I did go and do a light edit. I looked up the year it comes into the game, like 1728 or something like that. And I found a book that was written then, and I took some of the language from that book and mixed it in to sort of give it a old-timey feel. And I was like, oh, we're doing theater. Right. Betrayal is basically an excuse to do dinner table theater. Of course it is, right? And then we started to put more theater moments in there. And there's a couple things in Haunts that sort of try to address that, like the soundproof room.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can only whisper when you're in this room. It doesn't need that. And when I played with my family, we would all whisper while we were in the room, and it was really, really creepy. And so we just put a few more things in like that to cause players to do very light acting, role-playing, theatrical moments to try to get you involved with basically sitting around the fire and like, I've got a story for you, and like doing all the voices for it. So yeah, that came out of Ryan's brilliant work on the helm. And on the back says, do not respect it. It's customary to have a chant when you take it out of the box, and sort of these instructions. And we're like, that is genius.
Nice. I'm sure the process is similar in that in our game, it was like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't put a sticker on that. Don't do it. And then one person does it and it's positive. And you're like, rush, everybody, every game.
The floodgates are open.
Put something on there.
Yep. Group dynamics are something I do explore in my games a lot. Right. Where it's like, hey, this is probably a bad idea, but it's not against the rules. And you're like, everyone will just sit there and someone will do it. Someone has to.
Yeah.
Just to shift gears a little bit, I see that you've done some game developer lecturing at universities. So like I think you
Yeah.
lectured at MIT, and then a couple other places. Um, how fundamental do you think that is for people to either take a course or have some understanding if they're looking to build their own game? I mean, do you think, like, you know, how did you get into game design? How did you decide, like, figure out all of these mechanics? You know, and again, I'm asking you to encapsulate like 20 years of experience, but like,
Sure.
do you think now designers have like a leg up with actually course and study and lectures and things?
They do, because it's actually a thing now that can lead to a job. Although most people, it's video game design. It's very few people come out and go to board game design. Um, I got a job at Hasbro in 1998, and I had a job that basically doesn't exist anymore, which is working at Parker Brothers or Milton Bradley and having a salary and basically doing the apprentice, journeyman, master. You know, I got paid no matter what. I got to work with people who had been doing it, who are older. I got to make mistakes. If my game did horribly, I got the same salary. If it did well, I got the same salary. I got to basically just make games and get better at it by learning what mistakes I made and having new ideas. Um, that is what school can do. It forces you to make something and remake it and come up with new ideas and be critiqued and do things. So basically, you're taking that same journey of making bad things and then eventually making kind of bad things. And then you keep going until you can make pretty good things. Um, that said, there is a lot more people who know how to do that now. So yes, while there are courses you can take if you're 23 and you graduate and you have a degree in game design and you've made 5 games, there's a lot of people who are kind of in that place right now. And what you end up not learning a lot of times in school is, well, what do you do next, right? I did get an email from someone. I'd given a lecture this January back when travel was a thing, and down in South Carolina, and just kind of reached out about like next steps for doing game design because they had done a couple games. I'm like, make some games, show people. That's pretty much it. Like, you got a game, and I'll say they. I don't remember if it was a man or a woman or how they identified. They were like, well, I have some ideas, but I just want to get a job, and then you'll teach me how to make games. I'm like, no, there's a lot of people who can play my game, and I can play and go, yeah, this person knows what they're doing. And I can read the rules and I can ask questions. A lot of times people are like, I have a game idea and I want to know what to do and how do I make a game? Like, just send me your rules. And they're like, I don't have rules. I just have an idea. I'm like, I can give you 10 ideas by the end of this email.
Same thing for screenwriting. A lot of people say, I have this idea for a movie. Like, okay, great. Put it on paper.
Yep, where's your
if it's
script?
not on paper, then
yeah, write a script and then send me the script and then I'll read it. Well, it's a great idea. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll pitch you the idea and then you write the script and we'll split it 50-50 because I gave you the idea.
That takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, what is that process for you now? So traditionally, what's the traditional process? And then what are you doing now as far as like, you have an idea, then kind of what happens? Do you typically you would write the rules, get your cardboard cutouts kind of thing, have everybody play test it, then take it, like how does that work for you now?
Kind of the same way it's worked. I mean, the details change. We're going to use Tabletop Simulator instead of something else. If we're doing Unmatched, another deck for Unmatched, we're building off a brand, so we already know the rules. But you have an idea, and then you try to make something playable as soon as possible. And everyone, myself included, will try to make the best thing before you test it, which doesn't matter because it's going to be bad. So sometimes people who work for me or people I work with, I find myself in this role where they say to me, like, they'll try to make it perfect. Let's just get it done and play it. Because once you play it, you'll see what your ideas are. And then, what did Matt Leacock call it the other day? The trough of despair, right? Where you're like, I spent all this time and it's going to be great. And then people play it and it's bad. And you go, what am I doing? I'm a hack. I don't know what I'm doing. But if you've been in that trough before, you're like, nope, just take notes. And then one thing I sometimes do is when I read the notes or I'm watching playtesting, and it's hard not to take it personally, right? Playtesting is basically like having a kid, and then you're being a parent, you're doing all this stuff, and on the first day of kindergarten, you dress them up, you invite people over, and they tell you everything they don't like about your kid. I don't like the outfit. I don't like the way they stand. Are you sure that's a good name for this person? Why are they like picking at their pants like that? And you're like, I made this thing, man. They're like, oh, this is a proud moment for me. One thing that helps me is I sometimes pretend it's not my game. right? Like if a publisher came and said, hey, we have a game idea, here's some playtest feedback, here's some notes, can you just look at it and give thoughts on what to do next? And then I just sort of mentally play a little role-playing game like, oh, I'm going to evaluate this game that someone sent me, and I read the notes, and it's not personal then, right? I don't go, what are you talking about? That was the best part, and you didn't like it, and I spent like an hour, and I was all proud of that idea. You just go, oh, okay, well, that idea didn't work. And then you just try to make it better. And you just keep doing that until it's not bad, which just sounds so, it just rewrites and rewrites and rewrites, and it sounds so obvious and simple. Question is, how do you make it better? And that's the thing you learn by doing it again and again. Usually it's not by adding stuff. It's usually by taking away stuff. It's usually by figuring out what the priority of the game is. You're like, I have this great auction game and blah, blah. And then you realize that people didn't like the auction. They liked the scoring system. You're like, no, that's just a scoring system. The cool thing is the auction. And then you have to go, no, cool thing's the scoring system. Maybe the auction game is a different game. Maybe I minimize that. Maybe I've been eliminated, even though it's where it got me the idea. It's no longer the thing the game is about. And you have to resist the temptation to add rules exceptions. This will solve it perfectly if we just add this one rule and then a token, and then you put the token here, and then you have to remember on your turn, if you have the token on your card, that you re-roll 2s, and then it solves it. And it does, and no one's going to remember it. And so what is an idea that solves it 90% or 95% is your perfect idea, but everyone will play and everyone will understand and it works within the rules. So, and even then you'll get it wrong. And then as you keep going, eventually you'll get to something and you'll go, it's still not working. And the trick I've learned is keep saying, what problem are we trying to solve? Okay, we're trying to solve, people aren't using enough items. Why aren't they using enough items? They cost too much. Why do they cost too much? Well, we had to make them cost more because people were buying too many items. So is it just in between? What if they didn't cost anything? What if you just get items? What if there are no items? You can just keep backing up. And at some point you've made a bad decision like 3 versions ago and you're patching that bad decision. And if you just keep patching that bad decision, it'll never come together. And you have to be willing to say, we made a bad decision somewhere in the past. And we are making every future design decision off of that. Let's go find the source of the problem and rip that out and try building it in a new way. I'm kind of even doing that on Return to Dark Tower right now. I'm like, this is a perfectly fine game. If we put it out right now, it'd be a little longer than I'd like. Works fine. People understand it. People are enjoying it. I'm like, there's a couple fiddly bits I don't like. And we're like, yeah, but you need to do this because it balances that. And if you don't do this, then players don't feel pressure. I'm like, I agree. It all works. But let's back up how we get to these decisions and see if we can do a simpler way. And we may not. But when I started saying that to the team yesterday, they're like, what? I'm like, costs us nothing to spend a week just trying different versions and playing around. We got the week. And at the end of the week, this is the best version. Then we know we did our homework. And if we stumble across something else, then we made it a little cleaner, a little faster, a little smoother. People are having some option paralysis, especially in the first game, right? And we can look at tutorials and we can look at things. I'm like, these are all patches. If you're, because people don't know what to do on their first turn. So how do we get people to hear the rules, sit down their first turn and go, I know the 3 options I can do right now, because they're not seeing it as cleanly as we'd like. Again, people play a turn and they're like, oh, I kind of get it. And then they play a second turn. They're like, yeah, okay, I get it. Right. But I want to just smooth that out and make that first experience. Like you kickstarted it and 15 months went by and you get it to your house and you open up, you put the batteries in the tower and the lights. You're like, I'm all excited. And then I don't want you spending 3 hours trying to take your first turn.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So what are some of those tools that you actually use in that game design process? Is it all spreadsheet based?
I mean, sometimes it's spreadsheet. Basically, I try to write the rules and update the rules as I go, because if a rule's hard to write, it's going to be hard to write in the final rules. Even if it's like, oh, this is a simple concept, but people aren't getting it, we can't articulate it. That's just the way it's going to be right up until the end. If you can't explain it at the beginning, you're not going to be able to explain it at the end. So I write the rules as I go. I keep a bill of materials as I go. You don't want to go, okay, this $20 game, we finish it. It's 500 cards. Well, it's not a $20 game, is it? Oh, right. Well, it's too late to fix it because we spent 6 months working on it. So I keep a bill of materials. I actually keep a master spreadsheet. One tab will be bill of materials. Other tabs will be the cards or the tokens. We can use Adobe InDesign to turn cards, basically a data merge, to turn tabs into cards. You can do that with tokens. There's usually a game board that's just roughly drawn out in Illustrator. Again, I try to work, what size is this game board? What size is the box going to be? Let's make the game board the right size, so later on you don't find out the game board has to be 70% of the size and now all the spaces don't fit. Like, it's just, you're gonna, I think a lot of people are like, I'm not worried about that, right? I just want to make a game. Well, eventually a game has to become a product, and the publisher is going to come back to you and say, you need to cut these cards or cut this board or make this smaller, or we have 4 fewer pages in the rule book. And you're going to have to do it at some point. It's better to do it before you fell in love with the perfect idea rather than at the end, you know? So I try to work cleanly like that. I think some publishers get surprised. I get on like a phone call with them or something, and I'm like, you know, what's your retail for this and what box size do you want? They're like, oh, how many languages are you going to be in? Are you going to be in German? Because that's 150% the length of English. So I'll make sure the card copy is small enough that you won't be, translation won't be a problem. And they're all like, what? I'm like, I've been doing it 22 years and I'm a publisher. Like, again, those are the tricks that I have learned that they're not going to learn in school, which is like what happens when you go from a fun game to play out of scraps of paper and, you know, little pennies and things like that to something on a shelf is something that I'm thinking about the whole time. And I try not to let it affect early game decision. I tend to work with people and I'm like, we're in early design, anything goes. It can have electronics, it can have batteries, it can cost $1 million. Let's just talk about it. But pretty quickly after that first play test, we're like, okay, let's get serious now. Let's add up our cards. There's a lot of cards. Why do we have so many cards? Is there a better way to do this?
So basically now you've become Hasbro and you are now officially compromising with yourself.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is I've learned like, oh yeah, no, there was a point here. Well, at Hasbro, in order, the first checkpoint to get a game approved is you need basically a pitch and maybe a rough prototype that you're going to walk people. It's going to play something like this. They're not going to play it. You're going to bring it out. You're going to talk to a room in a theater of like 30 executives. And what they're doing is half listening and they're more looking at the cost sheet you have. And they're like, why do you think you're really going to sell this? Is this a big enough advertising load? You're not at enough profitability. You need, and you're not going to actually even be able to put it down on the table unless you're at a certain profit margin, and marketing has a marketing plan with it. And they're buying off on, hey, before we spend some real money here, we want to make sure that at the end we're going to make money. And if you don't have like a rough plan on how to do that, then go get a rough plan, because you're just going to be wasting everyone's time and money for something we're not going to put out. And I would always try to cheat it. I know I'm a couple points below profit where I'm supposed to be right now, but I think the forecast is low, and I think we can hit the total bottom line numbers like that. It doesn't work that way. I'm like,
anyway, so I mean, I've heard some great advice in there. I've heard some universal advice in there, things that apply to other fields than just game design. Thomas, did you have any final questions?
No, none that you can answer on camera right now. Oh, okay. I'm just dying for a Pandemic Legacy. That's it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm dying to talk about it. Like I'm very excited about it. No, when it happens, I'll be everywhere talking about it. It's coming.
But yeah, so again, it was fantastic meeting you in person. Again, if I didn't let it show, Thomas and I are very big fans. We enjoy your games very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate you playing Betrayal Legacy. One of the things about being a game designer is you're often removed from the final experience, right? You'll meet people and they'll say, oh, I played your game. I really liked it. That's great. I love it. If you see me at a convention and you liked one of my games and you have a particular anecdote, would love to hear it, unless I'm late for a meeting. But I rarely see people playing a finished game, right? And it was hard not to watch it and think like playtesting, like, they got that rule wrong. Maybe I should make it. And I'm like, no, it's done. It's done. Like, it is out there and I can't change it. And I would just put it on to this other monitor here and I would work on other things and kind of listen to it. And then I'd be like, that was an interesting moment, right? And go from there. So thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us for this chat.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that was our interview with Rob Daviau. And
That was correct.
It was close. It was borderline on mispronunciation. The one thing that I really was just fascinated with in talking to him was just the breadth of his experience. You know, it's the fact that he's been doing it forever, so therefore, well,
for a long time.
yeah, for a while, exactly.
He's a pillar of the industry, a titan,
But usually it's very pedestal-like, where it's like, oh, this is somebody at the top tier, where I find it very fascinating to start to pick apart what they've done through their career and to find some of the nuances and interesting things that they've learned along the way that kind of build them up into being the pillar of the community, or like the top tier of what it is that they do. And so I found that really fascinating, is just the learnings that he's had along the way and how he sort of cultivated that into everything that he does today.
Yeah, so. And I like how you called out that, you know, he at Hasbro, he worked for the man, and now Restoration Games, he is the man. That was very...
Well, that is kind of the learnings, is the fact that, you know, when I was younger, I looked at my career as what are the jobs that I need to do in order to do the thing that I want to do. So what are the building blocks that when I work for a bank or for, for tech companies or wherever it was that I was working, what are the actual job skill sets that I can learn from this company in order to go out and do my own thing? And so I feel that based on those experiences, I can then have the confidence to say, I can do this on my own, as opposed to being like, I'm going to try this on my own and flounder through every single step of the process because I don't know what I'm doing. Where, you know, again, he went from Hasbro to learning a lot of the fundamentals, and now institutes them consistently.
Of being his own, of moving to a freelance world, and then moving to, publisher world. And then, and still doing game design. I like one thing that was pointed out, you actually mentioned this after the interview, was how when he talks to a publisher as a game designer, he brings all of that knowledge of being a publisher to that, right? So he knows about different languages and how much extra... German is to put on a card. So if you are doing different foreign language versions, you need X amount of space or font or word count.
And that just comes from experience. So those are things that you don't know until you actually do them and then know them, which I find fascinating. And that's kind of why we talk to all of these people, is to sort of like crack their heads open and find out all those little bits of nuances that you're like, that's interesting.
And I don't know if it's breaking news or not, but I was very happy to hear, I don't know if he said this on camera or if it was off camera, but Pandemic Legacy Season 3 this year.
You kept asking him. I don't know either, because it was just
and
continual.
He's like, there's no mystery. There was some manufacturing delays. I'm like, oh, okay. It's not a secret? He's like, I can't tell you when. I'm like, oh, okay. But this year. This
calendar year.
2020.
So you're not in 2020. You're going to get 2 pandemics, people.
Whoa!
2 pandemics.
On that bombshell, we're going to wrap up episode 11 of the Untitled Show podcast.